The Dane and Derek Show is an uncensored, unfiltered podcast. Content warnings can be found in the episode description.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Dane and Derek. I'm Derek, and you probably know by now that I make movies and play a lot of tabletop games. Joining me, as the title would suggest, is my good friend, Dane.
Hey, I'm Dane. I write. I do some audio stuff. I love tabletop RPGs. Yeah, heading to law school soon. That's me, sort of,
Yeah.
in a bullet point sort of way. I don't know if that's the proper order of bullet points anymore, but here we
I
are.
mean, eventually you'll be like, hi, I'm Dane Fogdahl, law student. And then it'll play like an anime intro, and then you'll have a voiceover, and you'll be the protag of this law school drama anime show.
I bet that exists. I mean, it totally does. Ace Attorney.
Yes.
Yeah, that totally
Yeah.
exists.
Hi, I'm
Phoenix
Dane Fogdahl,
Wright,
the
Ace.
real Ace Attorney. I'm kidding. I've never played these
Interesting.
games.
Me neither. No, I honestly, I don't know if I'm ever going to identify as like a law person first. Like I really don't. Um
Hi, my name is Dane Fogdahl. Human first, law person second, lawman
maybe
second.
yeah, maybe that's why they put the Esquire at the back.
Oh
Um
wow, yeah, Dane Fogdahl, Esquire.
Esquire.
That sounds
Yeah.
so cool, man. Good luck getting
I
that,
think it's I think
Esquire.
it sounds dumb. Um
It's like being like, I am Lord Dane Fogdahl.
Indeed. Yeah, exactly. It's
I am
exactly like that.
of the town of Boulder, Colorado.
Bow before
For
me and
me.
my Esquire. Like, yeah, no, it's so dumb. Yeah, no, yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to do it, and I'm really excited to go, but like I don't think it would ever be healthy to attach myself so strongly to that. That
Yeah.
sounds like a bad work-life balance from the start.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
You don't want to be like a I don't know, like a parent teacher conference, and they're like, Mr. Fogdahl. No, I'm sorry, it's Mr. Dane Fogdahl, comma Esquire. You
yeah.
don't ever want to
Yeah,
be like that.
you don't want to be that person. It's like the same thing if you're like if you get like a doctorate and you insist that people call you doctor blah blah blah, right? Like,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah, it's just
it
it's not the mode, so to speak.
no, no, no.
So,
But
I mean, I guess this
yeah.
kind of ties into today's topic:
Mhm.
submissions, submitting to things.
I submitted quite a few applications and
I
it
can
was
imagine.
a doozy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this came out of another episode. I think it was the film festival episode.
Yeah, totally was.
And we're kind of opening it up to the broader submitting to publications, festivals, college apps, grants.
Yeah.
I guess like
Yeah.
really anything where you have to fill out an application and effectively sell yourself and
On
explain to
some
people why
level.
you deserve to be here.
Yeah. Long story short, I have done 3 rounds of college apps in my life. Uh, I currently am not doing a lot of submitting for writing publications, but there was a period of time, uh, roughly from like 22 to 24. I've had to take like COVID basically just like shut this stuff down, but like for me at least, where I was submitting really regularly to writing publications and like I guess like job apps sort of counts. In the past I've done submissions for like grants and things. Um but my big overall take with submissions is they are a skill like anything else and you can get really good at them. And what I mean by getting good at them isn't necessarily just like, oh, get good at a cover letter and like talking to people about this stuff and feeling okay about selling it, but like you need to be good at getting rejected. Like
Yeah.
that is like the key thing. Like if you can get good at handling rejections, you can get really good at submitting to stuff.
Yeah.
Um and until you do, submitting is going to suck. Like it is going
Mhm.
to suck hard.
Yeah.
Um
Especially when you have to pay money to submit somewhere.
oh my god, yeah.
It's the fucking
Oh yeah.
worst.
I so um so I So law school for me was a really positive experience with submissions. I got accepted 5 out of the 6 places I applied to. With the one that being rejected me was Stanford. So, you know, was
Yeah.
reaching there. Um, on the other hand, like with getting published in journals and stuff with my poetry and fiction and stuff, that is more like a 90% rejection, if not 95.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm very proud of this. I got to a point with that where like every rejection just sort of like started feeling less like a it started feeling less like a, oh god, they didn't like it, or to me like, cool, great, next step. I'm one step closer to the next one, right? Like this
Yeah.
like very different, it had a very very different feeling to it.
Uh-huh.
Um uh and so like getting to that point felt really good. It got to the point where, and this is something I'm like, man, I really got to get back onto this. It got to the point where I actually kind of enjoyed submitting my work to um publications. Like I enjoyed
Mhm.
that process because it felt like progress. It's like I did the work, I'm proud of it, and now I've sent it off and I'm going to receive probably mostly rejections here. Um and I think something that's really hard about submissions, particularly around art, um like it's a little easier with like a college app where it's like, well, guess my grades just weren't good enough for like any number of things, right?
Yeah.
With art, you're like, this is me. Oh, you didn't like me.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Like, there's something
Yeah.
that can be really brutal about that. And it takes a really long time to like learn that, like, yeah, it's nothing against you and your work often might be good, but like fit is everything. And, you know, they see a ton of stuff. Like, frankly, the most of the time when you're rejected, it's not that like there wasn't value or they didn't like your work. It's
Yeah.
we have we had 100 submissions and 5 spots,
Mhm.
and we picked the ones that were the perfect fit.
Right.
Um, like something I often think about is like, um, like if you write horror, or made a horror short film and then submitted it to a generic film festival, it might literally be the best film that gets submitted to the shorts. It might be. And odds on, you're probably not going to get in.
Right.
You could be the best thing, but if you put it in the wrong place, it's never going to work. Like think about like you and I did a ton of work receiving films and looking them over when we were at the Boulder International Film Festival. Think about how many we just put aside because not because they were bad or we didn't think that they were good, but we were just like, this isn't the right one. It's not the right one. There's a lot of
Yeah.
value to it, but it wasn't the right
Fit.
film because
Yeah.
we had goals, right?
Exactly.
Like we were like trying to put on a youth film festival, and so like if like we watched some really good films and we were like, people under 25 are not coming to this.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
not going to work, right? Like,
Exactly.
and learning, like getting to the point where not only do you know that intellectually, but you feel it enough that when you get that rejection letter, it's not demoralizing. It's like, great, good information. Maybe I'll try with this place again with a better piece, or maybe it just was the wrong fit. Period. Great, I've learned a lot. It feels like a like progress and not like a hit is super hard. I've
Yeah.
talked a lot. You have had a lot of experience with that recently.
Yes, very much recently. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I agree with your sentiment that applying to festivals and submitting your work around is a lot harder than college apps. Like, I
Oh yeah.
sent in like, I don't know, 15, 20 college apps and I got into like 3 places. And I was not as heartbroken about it as my parents were.
Yeah.
Because it's like, yeah, I know I didn't have the grades for it. Why did I even try to apply? Like,
Hmm.
like I have significantly below averages on everything. Um, and but when it comes to festivals, especially, right? It's like because like you spend a lot of time and money making a movie, and then
Mhm.
you put it into a bunch of festivals and you have to wait until it's
Oh, the
out of that
waiting
circuit
sucks.
to put it out. And you spend maybe an extra like grand or two, depending on how many festivals you submit to.
Uh-huh.
Um, and even that is like a game, right? Like what you were saying, it's like the idea of knowing where your film might best fit is really important, and that's really hard. Like in a lot of ways, like there's a reason why like big studio films start with what's their target audience, and then they make a
Yeah.
film to appease that audience. You kind of have to think a little bit about that when you're submitting to like a festival or like a publication. You have to think like, is this piece going to, you either have to like know what publication you want to get into and make a piece that, fits with it, or have a piece and then be okay putting it in anyone in publications that are better suited for it. Like
Right. Right.
when I made, like, the difference between making Sinigang and Heroes Pizza was very different. Like Heroes Pizza, I was like, I just want to make a really good short film. I'll figure out where to put it later.
Yeah.
And that, it shows. I only submitted to like 6 or 7 festivals and I only got into one of them.
Mhm.
And the one that I got into was like a new filmmakers festival. So
Mhm.
it worked out. They were looking for scrappier DIY films, and all the other festivals I submitted to didn't get into, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Whereas Sinigang, I was like, this film probably won't play at any like regional festivals, but it will
Mhm.
probably play at any Asian American circuit festival.
Yeah.
And so I pretty much exclusively submitted to Asian American film festival circuits. I submitted to a handful of bigger shorts film festivals. I
Mhm.
already got one rejection from one of them, and it was honestly kind of nice. It was like, okay, cool. It was a very validating to the sense of like, oh, I played the game right. I knew that it wasn't going to get in, but I still tried. And hey, the programmers were nice enough to give me tickets to come to the festival, to come watch
Yeah.
some movies. That's really cool. Like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that's great. So it's like sometimes rejection is like really cathartic and really rewarding because like it can reward that you knew, even though but you still tried, right?
Yeah, I am thinking, and when you're talking about that, about some rejections I've gotten from journals where they said a couple of things, like where they might have given like a slight critique, or a couple of times I've had someone be like, "Hey, this wasn't the right piece, but would you submit again?"
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
like
exactly.
whenever someone says that, whenever there's a response beyond no, I'm always like, that might be even better than a yes.
Exactly, because
Um,
you're built
that's information. I can
exactly.
do something with that.
Exactly. You can do something with that. And most importantly, right? When you're submitting to these publications and you're submitting to festivals and you're submitting anywhere, you're building a relationship. And that's
Mhm.
something that like college apps, you don't really do with that. Like there's a little bit, like especially like I think for smaller programs, but
Yeah,
for like
it's
bigger state programs, like unless you're talking to the like admissions counselor, which is like very few rare, um, you're
at the
not.
undergrad level, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, especially at the undergrad level. You're not really building that relationship as you would say, like, yeah, when like, like the editor in chief at a publication is like, "Hey, this wasn't the right fit, but what else do you have?" Right? Like
Yeah.
that's a chance, that's a connection in a relationship that is important because at a certain point, right? Like we all know that the reason why some people get programmed more than others is because they know the people programming.
Mhm.
And those
Absolutely.
people programming want to program these people's work.
Yeah.
And so, like a lot of times with festivals, they don't even submit through the portal. They just mail the DVD to the office and with the
Mhm.
programmer's name on it, right?
Yep.
And I think that's kind of the place that I don't think people, I think there's a lot of stigma against it. Um, because it's like, oh, nepotism, which, yes, nepotism. But it is a relationship based off of merit and the work that you've created. And I think that it's okay to know the folks and it's okay to be like, hey, I have something. Do you know where it might fit? Um,
Yeah.
I think is a fine thing to ask someone if you know someone that is like a editor at a journalist or at a journal that you want or a programmer at a festival. I think it's always good to know what they're looking for because I
Mhm.
think it'll also inform whether or not the films or writings you've done fit. Like, and that I think is like the hardest part about it, right? It's like you don't know what they want, and you have to hope that you have what they want. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Because
yeah,
even if, like even when you submit to something that seems like a roughly good fit, you're not you're not privy to everything,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know if last year, for example, like let's take um Hero's Pizza, for example, or no, uh, uh, help me with
Synagogue?
this, synagogue. Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. Um, uh, you don't know if like last year that particular Asian American festival had like 4 films about cooking. You don't know, right? And then that year, even though it's probably overall a good fit, they might be a little bit like, we've done a lot of that. Let's look at something else. Like
Yeah.
you never quite get the whole picture. You never do.
Yeah.
And that's totally okay. And like I even with like college apps, so I applied for a master's in composing. Um, and I applied 3 places. I only got into one. But I really wanted to go to CU Boulder. Um, and in retrospect, that was kind of a dumb mistake on my part because I wrote a lot of vocal music. Um, and CU was not that at all.
Right.
Um, and that was kind of devastating because I put all of my music forward. I got into DU, but that's because I have a much stronger vocal program.
I
Um,
didn't know that.
and so I didn't make those smart choices. Um, and I find that submitting to college applications for arts programs often looks a little bit more like submitting to um various media outlets.
Yeah.
Um, because because the truth is you cannot. Let me put it this way. Um, my grades in jazz band told nobody anything. Like my grades in all of my music classes told the master's programs for composition nothing about what kind of composer I was. They needed to see the
Right.
music.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, you got um into BU. You were on the wait list, right?
Yeah, I was on the waitlist deferred, so it was one
Mm-hmm.
of those things where if I was willing to wait a year, they would have reevaluate my app
Mm-hmm.
to see if they would let me in. Um, so
But then you got um an award on your film.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. So I had already committed to going to CU Boulder because I was like, if
Mm-hmm.
I can go to CU Boulder, and if I like it, I'll stay there 4 years. If I don't like it, I'll do this thing with BU
Mm-hmm.
because they have a decent film program. But then, yeah, got an award on my college app film. Called the admissions office, asked them to update my resume,
Yeah.
and that's probably honestly like getting that award on that film and calling the admissions office is probably what put my application back into like the stack. Um,
Yeah.
and like a month later, you know, you were there with me when I told
Mm-hmm.
you that
Yeah.
I got this mysterious phone call
Yeah,
that
no, and the thing is, that's the only thing you changed about your application,
yeah, exactly. That
right?
was the
Like,
only thing. My grades, my ACT score, my
yeah,
SAT score, none of that all of that was the same.
right. And so they were looking at your films, which
Yeah.
is really that's fascinating to me. That's fascinating.
Yeah,
Um,
it's also incredibly fascinating because now they don't have an artistic supplement anymore to get
really,
into film school. Yeah.
huh?
So, yeah, I know. So
That
like
doesn't seem
it
wise.
doesn't seem wise and I constantly think about how like, oh wow, like they're kind of not like a kid like me wouldn't be able to get in,
Right.
which is pretty wild.
Yeah.
Um but that's another topic for another debate about gatekeeping in the arts
Oh, for
community.
sure.
Um
Yeah.
But yeah,
So
they were completely just looking at my work and they saw something in my work that fit with the program.
yeah.
Um, they saw that I could tell a story in a way that they felt was, you know, required of telling stories.
Yeah. So here's a question: what do you think changed your what's the word? So, like, because when you start out doing submissions of stuff, it often feels
Oh
pretty
yeah,
rough,
it
you know?
sucks.
Like, what do you think was the thing that kind of like started changing it? Like, what did you do to start improving your?
Hmm. Well, I started considering it a part of the process.
Mhm.
I started thinking about every film I was making and in terms of where is it going to live? Is it going to
Mhm.
live on the internet? Is it going to live in a theater? Is it going to live in the festival circuit? And then I took a hard long look at my work and I really contemplated like is it the work? Is it me? And I kind of came to the conclusion that it is in fact the work. The work
Mhm.
wasn't the best it could have been. And
Mhm.
so I needed to start over from scratch and kind of
Gotcha.
really reinvent the way that I work. And then once I did that, because the first film I did, I intended to submit it to festivals, like using that new model.
Mhm.
But by the time I like finished, it was like kind of too late to submit to festivals. And so I was like, okay, you know what? I'll put it on the internet, let people know I'm still making movies. And
Yeah.
then the second film, Heroes Pizza, I was like, okay, I'm feeling pretty confident I can make a good movie. Because the other film I made was pretty good. Like it feels better. It feels more in line with what I want to be doing. So let me, you know, push further down that, right? And I think the thing that I think really reassured me was like this idea of like even if you submit, like don't leave any doubt that the work you made was bad. Uh
Mhm.
as I think there was a lot of films I've made that I've put into festivals where I've seriously doubted the quality of the work that I put forward and whether or not I made a good movie. And
Yeah.
I think taking that mentality of no matter what, make sure you made a good film that you are proud of, even if it gets rejected, really helped me because Heroes Pizza got rejected from everything. And, you know, it got on the short list, I think twice at New Filmmakers LA before finally getting programmed. So a
Mhm.
lot of half no's, half yeses. And I kept telling myself, like, no matter what, you made a really good film and it getting into a festival only validates that you know, like I changed it to getting into a festival just validates that it is a good film but you already knew that. So,
Right.
and I think that that shift in mind really helped me kind of be like shrug off rejection.
Mhm.
Um, also like, I don't really know how it works for the writing world, but in the film world, if you submit early, it's usually cheaper. Um,
Uh, eh, it's
so in terms of film, like there's a season when you can time to make your film depending on what track you want to go on. And I've gotten
yeah.
very lucky and I've happened to time my films on that track. Um,
Right.
so I'm very lucky that I'm in that rhythm now because now, you know, it's not like I'm making a bunch of films and then I need to pay like $200 to submit to like, you know, some local festival because it's, you know, the late deadline, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
well, that's also because like I have some insider knowledge. Like I took a class on submitting to festivals and running film festivals, and having worked in the festival circuit, we know that we by the time it's like the late deadline, we most likely aren't going to take your film.
There are not many
Um,
slots left.
yeah,
No.
it's like it's got to be really, really good.
Right, right. Like kind of what you want to do is you want to be in early and
Yeah,
be you want to be the thing to get knocked like you want to be the thing everyone else that gets compared to,
exactly.
right? You want to come in and be fresher.
You want to set the
Uh,
tone, which like, you know, going back to last week's episode on sports, right? In
mhm.
sports, you often want to set the rhythm of the game. You want to be in control of that. And
You want to be in control of the tempo, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think that that's exactly what you have to do with submitting anywhere. Be first because it does set the tempo for everything else, more so than you might think.
Yeah.
Uh and that's I think a pretty underrated thing to look at. And so yeah, like I think for me it was that switch of knowing that I still made something good, even if it gets rejected, and I'm still proud of it. I am still
Mhm.
wanting to show it to people, and I'll get it out there somehow. And I think having that in the back of my head as like a guiding point, I think really changed how I felt about getting rejected from festivals and stuff like that.
Yeah. That makes sense. That's it's good. I'm glad you did.
Yeah, but you know, then again, it took a long time to get there.
Oh god, yeah. Like let's
Like
not.
I think probably
Like,
the first film I put into a festival circuit outside of like Wedding Crasher and Heroics was Bros of the Realm.
mm,
Um, and I mean,
Bros of the
I
Realm is a amazing learning experience.
exactly. But
Uh,
is it a great festival film? Probably not.
yeah.
Um, like it's an internet film. It belongs on the internet, easily accessible for everyone. And
Mhm.
yeah, I put that into like 30 film festivals, and it didn't get in anywhere. And that was like a huge hit because that was like at the time the most expensive film I made. Actually, no, it still is the most expensive film I've made. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, that was rough. And subsequently, pretty much all my college work, all my student work, didn't really get into any sort of student film festivals. Uh, like I think like Wedding Crasher played at another student film festival, and then a short I DP'd played at a student film festival. There were like maybe 3 films that got in over the course of those like 4 or 5 years.
Mhm.
Um, but they were either old films or films that I wasn't directly like the creative behind. And
Yeah.
I think especially like because like for you, like I can imagine every rejection being rough. Um, because
Yes.
you are like in some cases the sole author, right?
Yeah, I have not submitted a single thing that I did anything like co-authoring of.
Yeah, and I think like with
Um,
film, like at least you can be like, ah, well, I'm glad so and so's film that I worked on got in somewhere, right?
yeah.
Whereas like if you're the director writer and it didn't get in somewhere, your crew's not gonna. I think it's always a bummer, right? But it's not as much of a bummer as it is to the person that whose name is on like the first on the billing, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's always rough, but
Yeah, I mean, what ended up changing for me was essentially re taking a look at what got rejected.
uh,
Like taking a look like looking at it like, did I get rejected? Or did like if I boil it down, like, and this is very esoteric and like whatever, but like I think that writing in particular for me is me trying to communicate with other people about
mm,
kind of more about myself and connecting with them. Like, um, and so what kind of refocused on was like, oh, no, 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 no. They're not rejecting me as a person. What they're doing is saying like, I didn't hear you. And that could be any number of things,
right,
right? Like, when you give someone a piece of advice, maybe it lands with them or maybe it doesn't, right? Depending on who they are. Or maybe you kind of bungled your words a little there. And I'm like, oh, this might not have been that good of a communication. I might have done a bad
yeah,
job, right? Like, but that doesn't make what's sitting at the core bad. It doesn't that doesn't make my soul wrong, right?
right,
you know,
yeah,
um the worst that can be is like, oh, I just didn't do a good job communicating, right? Like that's what this is for me is it's a very extended, long, drawn out, complicated form of communicating with people. Um but like if I misspeak in a conversation with somebody, nobody's going to call me a bad person
hmm
um for slipping up on my words. It's the same thing. And so when I got into that mindset of like, oh no, that's you know that changed, and it changed it to being like, okay, this is just information, right? Like if my goal is to communicate my work, um myself, and connect with other people through writing, that's my goal. um and like what being published means is that I get to communicate with more people, um, right? And
right,
that the work, the story, the whatever, exists in a much more tangible form, um, to be shared and to mean something to people, right? Like that's what
hmm
publication is for. Then an acceptance and a rejection both mean something. It's all information. It's just it turned it purely into information
right,
for me, where it's like, oh, okay, this didn't work here, and like it starts becoming a game. Like if like for example, like if a work never really gets picked up anywhere, I might reassess that work. Like be like, maybe this one isn't right for publishing. Um, and the upside though is I was mostly doing really short stuff and poetry at the time, so it's like, oh, okay, well that I can just set that poem aside. I have 40 others that I can take a look at, right? Or
Right. Yeah.
it's not the same as like a huge investment as like what I've been doing lately, which is writing really long form, which means okay, gotta polish and polish and polish
Right.
because you know I you c- some people can, but like on the whole, you can't bang out a novel in a week. You know, like you can, but can you?
You
Like,
can bang out a vomit draft, maybe,
yeah,
but
like
not like a publishable novel.
right, but not in the way that you could write 10 poems in a week,
Right.
and
Yes.
many of them might actually be good. You know, like
Right.
um, and so it, but yeah, it turned it everything into just this is just information for me achieving my goal. This is not the goal. The goal is the communication, right? Um, and being accepted is a success, right? It
Mm-hmm.
means, oh, cool, I got in. This is progress. This is helpful for achieving my goal, and it means I achieved it on some level, right? I
Yeah.
communicated with way more people. Um, my story reached people. I hopefully moved some, like any number of things, right? Like that's success, but it also tells me information. And a failure isn't a rejection is not I failed at my goal or that my goal is bad or I'm bad. It's just um this didn't work in my attempt to achieve my goal. That's it. You know,
Right.
it's a miss. Like that's all it is, right? Like if you're aiming at a target, like if you're like shooting arrows or something, um
Mm-hmm.
a miss is just a miss. It just tells you things. You haven't if you're assuming your goal is to become good at archery, um a single miss does not you have not failed your goal. Um
Yeah.
You know, and a single bullseye also does not mean you are
You've made
suddenly a
it.
very good archer.
Yeah.
It just means you did something right, you
Exactly.
know, and you need to learn from that as much as you need to learn from your failures. Like
Yeah.
often we sometimes recontextualize failure as a learning experience. I think we also need to recontextualize successes as learning experiences, right? Like why did this work? You
Yeah.
know,
Oh my God. Yeah.
I think sometimes we completely ignore the fact that like we need to look at why this worked too.
Yeah. I mean
Like that
that.
there's something, yeah.
No, exactly. I mean that's a big part of, I think, like, as you grow and as you submit, right? You start to learn, like, oh, these are the things that people are responding to in my work. Let
Yeah.
me try and do that again, right? You start taking those wins, those successes, and you start putting them back in, and eventually you get like one piece that is like pretty solid in that department, right? And I think, yeah, no, that's a great way to phrase that. Recontextualizing success to like inform how you want to move forward as well as your failures. Like, yeah. Cause I mean, like, if you look at like where you've succeeded, right? Because like success is often dismissed as like a, oh, it's just the end goal, right? You succeeded.
Right, right, right.
Bada
Yeah,
bing, bada boom, you're done.
and you don't need to
But
think about it. You're just like that, just enjoy it, right? But it's like, no, 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 there's something to learn there.
yeah.
And it's actually changed how I request feedback now.
Hmm.
Like I'll ask, like, I want to know what doesn't work, definitely. Like, please tell me that stuff. But like also please tell me what does. Because if you show me where all the holes are, I need to know what sort of stuff to patch it with. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Hmm.
Like if you're like, here's this if someone points out to me like this foundation is great, it doesn't work here, here, and here though. I'm like, okay, cool. You know what I did, but you did point out what I did well. I can build on that instead of just trying to completely just fix what was broken. Right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So it all kind of lines up. For yeah, in short, submission's just part of the process. You know, like, and like I think about it this way of like honestly, I'm sure being in festivals was a goal for you. Um, are you done? Did
No.
you do it?
It'll never
Right?
end, right?
No, it's because the goal is to be the best filmmaker you can be. and
Exactly.
right, and to share your stories with people, I would assume, right?
Right. It's not, yeah, making the film and getting it into one festival is not the end of the narrative. There is
Right, right,
so much more beyond that that you have to do. Like,
right.
oh boy.
If I am lucky enough to have a book on a shelf in a store someday, that does not mean I have succeeded at
Right.
becoming an amazing writer.
Yeah.
It means I have gotten way closer, I think. But also, have you read some garbage that gets published? Some of it's really bad. Some of
Mhm.
it's really bad.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, like, great for them. It's also my taste. It's like all that stuff. It's also, I actually find that really encouraging because I'm like, I I I have read stuff that's been published at this point where I'm like, I think my writing's better than this. And that's very encouraging,
Yeah.
like I don't know about you, but every time I think about certain Michael Bay films, I imagine that might be similarly for you. It's like I can tell a better story than this.
Yeah.
You know, it's
No,
it's
that
yeah, but
definitely.
the going back to my metaphor, the goal isn't to get a bullseye. The goal is to be a good archer, you know.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
no individual sort of success is going to be the individual make or break thing. Um
Correct.
and I think that's something that's really important is that you have to learn that, like, I think you need to learn as a person, like, that what you should love being an archer. You should not, like, and part of that can be enjoying getting bullseyes and
Mhm.
disliking when you miss. But
Yeah.
if your only goal is to hit bullseyes, I don't know if you're ever going to be that good of an archer because you got to miss a lot and you're
Mhm.
not going to get like something I think about is like with this is like I bet you that the greatest archer in the world probably will have missed the bullseye. By the time they die, they will have missed the bullseye so many more times than they will have hit it,
Oh yeah.
right? Like,
Oh yeah. I mean, like, I mean, I don't know if you ever keep track of how many things you've written.
no, I'd lose my mind. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean but that's the thing, right? It's like there's so much more things that we've done, created, written, filmed that is maybe not the work we show people because we're like, it kind of missed the mark.
right.
And I think that's fair, right?
S-
Like,
So you have to learn to love the drawing of the bow,
yeah,
the feeling of the arrow getting loosed,
the
right?
process.
You have to learn to love the thing. You have to
Yeah,
want to be the thing, not um not get markers of success or failure.
you
And
gotta be the writing. You gotta be the
you
movie.
do, you gotta be the poem,
Yep.
be the shot. Like,
Yeah.
and normally I don't make such pronouncements like this, but I might die on this hill. I might die on the hill of like, you gotta love the thing, not the success or failure.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah. You gotta love it, and it's okay if you get frustrated with it, but you still gotta love it. You know.
right. And like, I'm also of the mind of like the success and failure, who knows what your definition of that is or what it means or what it's gonna look like. Look at
Yeah.
Van Gogh. That man did
Oh
not have
yeah.
many markers of success, but damn, were the paintings good.
Yeah.
There's more than one composer out there whose work was discovered after they died, and not because they weren't trying to
Right.
like get their work out there, but because they didn't care to. They just liked
Right.
doing it. And so I sometimes sit here and think, you know, I bet you anything that some of the greatest living artists just aren't that successful by objective terms. Um,
Right.
by objective terms as determined by an outside society, but I think that they're still probably really amazing at it.
Oh
And
yeah.
and so like I think about this, like you and I have extrinsic goals that require submission.
Mhm.
Um, but that is not going to be the thing. That is one way in which to approach it. It is not the only way. And
Correct.
yeah, I don't know. But
I think
I
that's a
think
good place.
yeah, we hit 40 again. Well,
Yeah. Oh
on the
man.
recording. I don't know how much editing will carve out, but you know.
Yeah. Not much these days. I really just trim I don't know,
Trim the
whenever there's
fat.
a bad noise, but for the most part, I leave everything in, including our ums and buts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because it does not immune from the quality of the work we put out on this show. It actually is kind of nice. But today is the end of, or this is the end of this episode, not the end. I don't know where I was going with that sentence. We're done.
That's the app.
That's the app. So with that, you can follow Dane and Derek everywhere, and you can see the movies that I'm making. You go to my Vimeo this week, vimeo.com/Benig-Aiello. Go there. There's some Vimeo stuff there. Yeah.
You can find my writing at danewrites.com. There's a link out to my Substack, which is where you can find a collection of my writing. That one, speaking of publishing and submitting, that is honestly just a place where I put work that I kind of have good feelings about on the whole, but may or may not want to publish, or some cases may have already published. And you can find podcast and links to music as well there. I think that
Yeah.
might be it.
That might be it.
That might be it.
Well, while this might not be the end of it, this might be it for this week. So catch you next time.
See ya.